All right. Thank you for your patience, which is greater than usual. Just to advise that Monica will not be briefing today. She just told us. And tomorrow we will be joined by two guests. Abdallah Al-Dardari, the Assistant Secretary General and Director of the Regional Bureau for Arab States for the UN Development Program, and as well as Rola Dashti, the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic and Social Commission for West Asia, which is based in Beirut. They will be here to brief you on a launch of a new report on the expected socioeconomic impacts on Palestine from the conflict going on now. Hold on as we speak. This just in, as they say. All right. Just a little update for you on Gaza. Our humanitarian colleagues are warning about the increasingly dire situation of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza City and other areas north of Gaza as armed clashes and intense bombardments continue. As of yesterday, no bakeries were active in the north due to the lack of fuel, water, and wheat flour, as well as sustained damage to the bakeries themselves. Food security partners have been unable to deliver assistance in the north for the past 7 days. Still in the north of Gaza, hospitals sheltering tens of thousands of displaced men, women, and children continue to experience attacks taking place in close proximity to those facilities. The World Health Organization says that due to the lack of medical supplies, doctors have to conduct complex surgeries, including amputations, without anesthesia. Aid continues to enter Gaza from Egypt through the Rafah crossing. And whoever has that bell, I don't know whose that is, if you could, thank you. Aid continues to enter Gaza through Rafah, through Egypt. Yesterday, 81 trucks crossed the Rafah gates. Those were primarily carrying food, medicine, and health supplies, bottled water, and hygiene products, bringing the number of trucks that have entered Gaza since October 21st to 650. The daily volume of humanitarian assistance entering from Egypt, however, only meets a fraction of what the need of the civilian population is. The drinking water being brought in serves only 4% of Gaza's residents, and there's still no delivery of desperately needed fuel. As an example of the difficulties encountered by our colleagues working in Gaza yesterday, a convoy of 5 UNRWA and WHO trucks, escorted by 2 vehicles from the International Committee of the Red Cross, came under fire as they were on their way to deliver life-saving medical supplies to the Shifa hospitals, Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City. 2 trucks were damaged and one of the drivers was injured. The convoy ultimately reached Shifa Hospital, where it delivered medical supplies. As of now, 99 of our colleagues from UNRWA have been killed during this conflict. For his part, the High Commissioner for Refugees, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, was at the Rafah crossing today on the Egyptian side, which he called the gates to a living nightmare. He also met victims of the conflict at the Al Arish Hospital, which was set up at the airport in North Sinai. Tomorrow he'll be back in Cairo and then travel on to Jordan. He'll be back in Cairo later today, if he's not already back, and then on to Jordan. Moving to the north, in Lebanon, the head of the UN mission and force commander of UNIFIL, General Haroldo Lazzaro Sainz, reiterated his call for all parties to, quote, ceasefire and stop any acts that put civilians or UN personnel at risk and bring this beautiful bring this beautiful region into a conflict. He said this follows an inspection visit of several UNIFIL positions along the Blue Line, where peacekeepers have been working in very difficult conditions for the last month. General Lazzaro added that the current events have only reminded all of us of the importance of the UN's work and reinforced our commitment to do it. We issued a statement yesterday afternoon on Cameroon, in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the November 6th attack against civilians in Egbeko, in the Mamfe district of southwest region of Cameroon, which reportedly led to several people being killed, including children. Many others were injured and displaced, and property were destroyed. The Secretary General stressed that attacks against civilians are unacceptable. He called on the government of Cameroon to conduct an investigation and ensure that those responsible are held accountable. Also, just on Sudan, you may have seen that yesterday in Jeddah, the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces adopted a statement of commitment to protect civilians and provide unimpeded humanitarian access. The humanitarian coordinator for Sudan, Clementine Nkweta Salami, called it a moment of truth for the country. She said that all parties must provide reliable guarantees that relief items, humanitarian workers, and assets will be able to move safely across the country and across conflict lines. To facilitate the implementation of these commitments, OCHA will lead a new humanitarian forum for Sudan with the participation of all parties to the conflict. As a reminder, after almost 7 months of hostilities, half of the population of Sudan, that's nearly 25 million men, women, and children, need humanitarian assistance. Less than a fifth of them have been reached, mainly due to the insecurity and the fighting we've been mentioning here on a regular basis. All of those promises being made in Jeddah yesterday, I wanted to bring to your attention very disturbing reports from a variety of reliable sources that we've received, that our mission in Sudan has received, about events that took place between the 4th and the 6th of November. That followed the takeover of the base of the 15th Infantry Division of the Sudanese Armed Forces by the Rapid Support Forces, Arab militias allied, and as well as Arab militias allied with the Rapid Support Forces. They apparently committed serious human rights violations, particularly in the Ardamata neighborhood of El Geneina in West Darfur. Reports indicate that Arab militias killed a number of civilians and injured many others, and that these killings were targeted at the Masalit community. Human rights officers are currently verifying these reports and following up to obtain additional information and corroborate the details received, including the number of victims and of those responsible. The mission in Sudan reiterates its call on all parties to the Sudanese conflict to uphold their obligation under international human rights law and humanitarian law to protect civilians in the course of hostilities. And you've all been asking me about the peacekeeping convoy that left Gao on the 31st of October. I'm very happy to report that it left Kidal on 31 October and reached Gao last night without further incident. And if you'll bear with me, I have a rather detailed update which should answer a lot of the questions I've been receiving. As we reported last week, the convoy traveled nearly 350 kilometers, encountered 6 improvised explosive devices along the way. A total of 37 peacekeepers required medical attention, and all, thank God, have been discharged or in stable condition. 143 vehicles carrying 848 peacekeepers made up the convoy, and those peacekeepers came from Bangladesh, Chad, Egypt, Guinea, and Nepal, as well as the equipment represented the final elements of MINUSMA's accelerated withdrawal from Kidal due to the deteriorating situation in northern Mali. We were told that the convoy was approximately 9 kilometers in length. So you can imagine the challenges. The convoy also had to depart without air support due to the lack of flight clearance from the relevant authorities in Mali, and that, of course, increased the threat to the safety of the peacekeepers. In addition to insecurity, bad weather and poor road conditions caused vehicles to break down, adding to the challenges the convoy faced on its way to Gao. As a result of the delays, they were running low on supplies and had to be resupplied by air with fuel and water and other items, and we told you about that resupply 2 days ago. The departure from Kidal marks the closure of the UN Peacekeeping's 8th base out of a total of 13 bases. Over the next weeks, the mission will end its presence in Ansango in the Gao region, followed by Mopti, thus completing the second and final phase of the mission's withdrawal plan from Mali, as reported to the Security Council back in August. The remaining bases of Gao, Timbuktu, and Bamako, where MINUSMA is currently consolidating its presence, will be converted into liquidation sites and handed over to the Malian authorities once the liquidation phase that will begin on January 1st is completed. During the liquidation phase, only a small team will remain to oversee the orderly transport of assets belonging to the troop and police contributing countries to the respective nations and appropriate disposal of equipment belonging to the United Nations. These assets will either be repatriated or redeployed with other UN peace missions, or gifted to the Malian authorities or sold into the market in accordance with our relevant rules and regulations regarding the closure of peacekeeping missions. As the drawdown of MINUSMA personnel continues, half of the 13,871 personnel have now departed Mali. This week, the Chadian and Guinean contingents of the convoy that left Kidal are scheduled to leave from Gao back to their respective countries. The UN reaffirms our determination to complete the withdrawal of MINUSMA from Mali, with the exception, of course, of the liquidation team, including a guard unit and rear parties to troop and police contributing countries by the scheduled date of 31st December, and we are counting on the full support of Mali in that regard. We will send all of that by email shortly, so you get the numbers right. The Secretary General, turning to Afghanistan, the Secretary General condemns in the strongest terms the attack that took place on November 7th on a commuter bus, resulting in multiple civilian casualties. He reiterates his call to protect civilians, expresses his deepest condolences to the families of those killed, and wishes a swift recovery to the wounded, and he conveys his solidarity to the people of Afghanistan. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the UN Famine Prevention and Response Coordinator, Rina Galani, is on a 4-day mission to the country to discuss food security. Ms. Galani is meeting with authorities, diplomats, and aid partners to explore options to tackle the root causes of food insecurity, mobilize resources, and advocate for innovative interventions to prevent a famine. She said that the country needs to support to transform how it produces food to eradicate poverty and hunger, which affects a staggering 25.4 million people. That's nearly 25% of the population in the DRC. More than 7.5 million of these people live in conflict-hit parts of the eastern and western part of the country. And from Somalia, a quick update for you on the exceptionally heavy rains and floods that continue to hit across the country. Our colleagues at OCHA say that the heavy rains and flooding have now impacted nearly 1.2 million people, with nearly 335,000 men, women, and children displaced from their homes. Our humanitarian partners tell us that at least 28 people, including 8 children, have died. The situation is particularly serious in Southwest State, where nearly 500,000 people have been impacted. Roads have flooded, and shelters of scores of internally displaced people have been destroyed. Following a request by the Deputy Prime Minister, UN agencies quickly resourced maritime equipment that is now being used by local population to evacuate some 2,400 people who were trapped by the floods in Jubaland. UN agencies and our partners and the authorities are deploying urgent humanitarian assistance to flood-affected areas, including using available ground and air assets. Already, more than 63,000 people are receiving cash assistance. 88,000 are getting hygiene kits, and over 80,000 will be receiving clean water very shortly. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that more torrential rain is expected in the coming days, which is likely to damage more roads and inundate airstrips. Of course, that will have a negative impact on our ability to deliver assistance by air, especially in southern Somalia. And on Niger, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that despite challenges and limited resources, national and international aid organizations continue to deliver assistance in the country. Since the beginning of the year, more than 2 million people have received humanitarian aid in the country. Before the political crisis, 4.3 million people required assistance, including 3.3 facing food insecurity and 700,000 displaced people. Poor harvests, floods, growing insecurity, and the impact of the political crisis have led to further deterioration of the situation. The number in need of aid has now increased to 4.7 million. The $584 million humanitarian response plan for Niger is currently 43% funded. Quick note that this afternoon, the Security Council will hold a meeting on threats to international peace and security. Miroslav Yencha, the Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, will brief council members. And lastly, this morning, the UN Environment Program launched its Production Gap Report, which reveals that governments are on track to produce more than twice the amount of fossil fuels in 2030 than would be needed to limit the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. He called it, Secretary General called it a startling indictment of runaway climate carelessness. Governments are literally doubling down on fossil fuel production that spells double trouble for people and planet, he said. He added that leaders must act now to save humanity from the worst impacts of climate chaos and profits from the extraordinary benefits of renewable energy. That means ending our fossil fuel addiction by shrinking supply, driving down demand, and accelerating the renewable revolution as part of a just transition. Speaking of just transitions, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-ups. On Volker Turk's visit, did he have a press conference or something at the Rafah crossing?
Yes, he spoke at the Rafah crossing, and I believe he may be having some sort of press encounter in Cairo either today or tomorrow.
Can you double-check and when the times are so we can alert our staff?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Secondly, on Mali, you talked about 37 peacekeepers
Right.
Injured by IEDs. I came up with 39 because there were 22 this week and then 8 and 7 earlier last week on Wednesday and Friday. And in the initial ones, you had said at least 2 peacekeepers were injured, which adds to 39.
I usually like to say I stand by what I said, but I will stand by checking again with our colleagues to make sure our math is right. Amélie, please don't talk numbers to me.
No numbers.
In any event, this
No,
does this remain one of certainly I don't remember 39 peacekeepers being injured by IEDs.
You know, I think all the work that was put into this convoy is a tribute to the amazing work that our peacekeepers do under the most difficult circumstances. And here they were due to all sorts of logistical circumstances, security circumstances, the lack of air support. It was a tremendous feat to bring a convoy of some 800 people, 9 kilometers long, to relative safety. And we're happy that as far as we know, none of the peacekeepers were seriously injured.
And just as a follow-up to that, in the next 2 evacuations that are coming up, are they going to face the same distances and issues, including air support?
Everything is going to be challenging. We are working with the Malian authorities, and we want to ensure that the Malian authorities cooperate with us at every level, especially on air support, because that is critical to the safety of our colleagues. Amélie.
So no numbers, but Mali as well.
Okay.
The Mali army said yesterday they carried out airstrike on what was the UN camp in Kidal a week ago, targeting what they call terrorists. But the witness on the ground said there was several civilians killed in this airstrike. Any comment on what's going on? How worried are you about this situation now in the north?
I mean, sadly, we're not, I mean, as we've said, we've left. We're no longer on the ground. It is incumbent on the authorities in Mali as they continue to conduct anti-terrorist actions to do everything they can to protect civilians and to uphold international humanitarian law. Deji, then Ibtisam.
Few follow-ups. First, also on Mali. You mentioned that after the withdrawal of the peacekeepers, there will be a liquidation phase. I'm just wondering, do you still have assets in camps like in Kidal or Gao?
No, we took whatever assets we were able to take, we took. Others that we're not able to take that could pose a danger were destroyed or disabled.
Okay, my second follow-up. I asked you this question, will the UN participate in the peace conference by the French president?
I answered you, no? I answered somebody else who asked, but I can answer that again if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Martin Griffiths will be there, and there will likely also be a video message from the Secretary General.
Okay, my third
And there may be other UN officials.
My third follow-up, also yesterday I asked you about the withdrawal of Russia to the Treaty of CFE, the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, and also suspension of this treaty by European countries and the US. Any comments?
I don't have anything for you to share at this point, but I will send you something probably after the briefing.
Another follow-up. Sorry, today it's all follow-ups. When you said the convoy of the humanitarian aids being attacked in Gaza, do you know who attacked this convoy?
We don't have that. I don't have that information. We just know it was. I mean, often in these combat, we just know it was attacked. Ibtisam.
Just a quick follow-up on that. In which part of Gaza was that convoy when it was attacked? Do you know?
They were on their way to deliver medical supply to Shifa and Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City.
Okay, so I have a question on on numbers. Defense for Children said today that Israeli forces have killed at least 4,324 Palestinian children in Gaza since October 7th, and they think also that that's in additional to 1,350 children are missing under rebels. Can you confirm these numbers? And do you have also, regarding the West Bank and detention centers for Palestinian workers, I know that some of them were released. So you have any language on that too?
I think on the data, I'm not able to confirm it from here. You may want to ask our colleagues at UNICEF. We do know that given the large number, I mean the high proportion of young people and children living in Gaza, we have no doubt that a large number of children have lost their lives in Gaza. On the West Bank, on the detention centers, I will get back to you on that. Yes, sir, Sergey.
Sergey Barbu, TV Channel 5. The Russian military hit a civil ship under a Liberian flag as the ship was entering in a port in Odessa region. One person was killed. Please give your reaction.
I haven't seen that particular report. I will look into it, but we've been very concerned and have called out the risk to civilian infrastructure, including maritime assets. But we'll look into that report. Nabil, then Benno, and then we'll go back.
So we've seen hundreds, if not more, of civilians fleeing their homes and neighborhoods in Gaza yesterday and today.
Yeah.
Do you have any information about them, their safety, their destination?
I mean, we know that there were movement of population south. You may want to check with UNRWA if they have more details. I don't have any more details from here, but we do know there were a substantial number of people that moved south.
And you said the number of casualties among UN personnel is 99?
Yes, sir.
So can you please remind us again, what's the due process to investigate the killing of these people, because this is a man-made
I mean,
killing.
when this conflict ends, there will need to be accountability, and we will follow the UN procedures that are in effect when UN staff die in conflict zones.
A couple more, if I
Yeah.
may, please. And also, the United Arab Emirates will deploy a hospital in Gaza. Is this coordinated with the UN?
I will check with you. I've not heard that it is, but it doesn't mean that just because I haven't heard that it is, doesn't mean that it's not.
And last question, the SG has been calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. Does a humanitarian ceasefire mean that all operations should be paused, or does it cover only one area of Gaza or everywhere in Gaza?
I think a humanitarian ceasefire means that the fire ceases for humanitarian purposes. As to what that will actually look like, obviously that needs to be discussed, and as you all know, there's all sorts of discussions on that front. But we're looking at people are using different language. We're talking about a humanitarian ceasefire.
Yeah, but I'm asking because now Gaza is divided into two. And I need to know if the same formula covers the north and covers the south, because obviously
I mean,
the situation is different.
The integrity of Gaza needs to be respected. It is clear right now that no place in Gaza is safe. Benno.
Thank you, Steph. I just have a follow-up regarding Mali and the objects that UN personnel left behind. I assume you don't have this information right now, but can you give us a list of what kind of objects and were left behind, why they were destroyed, why they couldn't be not left behind, and
some
the
of
value?
it depends on, again, our ability when you have to move things by road, when you could be moving things by air. Also, the priority has to be the safety of UN personnel. I mean, one can easily imagine where you've got to travel these, 350 plus kilometers. You have a limited amount of room in your car. I mean, it's just it gets down to that, and whatever is could be considered to be used in an improper manner, then is destroyed or disabled. But I will try to get you a bit more granularity.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back, and then I'll come back in the front. Yeah.
Majdi Aziji with Sky News Arabia. Thank you very much. I want to go back to Gaza and ask you about the statement from Mr. Volker Turk, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, because he accused both parties of committing war crimes. How do you comment on this language? And does the Secretary General use these words before? I haven't heard him use this word before.
I would ask the High Commissioner of Human Rights staff and his communications people to explain what he's said. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has certain responsibilities. The Secretary General fully backs him in the way that he's doing his job. But you should ask that question to them. Evelyn, then Linda, and then Dulcie.
Sorry. Thank you, Stéphane. Back to Mali. Is there any, I guess you don't know who attacked the peacekeepers because you can't investigate it,
Well,
right?
I mean, IEDs are IEDs. We don't know who's put them there, but yeah.
Anyway, help from the government might mean some frank discussions with Russia, the power with the most influence in Mali. France, for example, blamed the attack in late summer in B-E-R, attack on the peacekeepers there, on Wagner, because it still has troops running around under Russian influence, despite the fact that officially it's dissolved, but it isn't And I have one more question.
But
if
what's
that's
the
it.
sorry? What's the question?
Oh, sorry. I wondered if it any consultations with Russia.
The discussions are being had with the authorities in Mali, who are the authorities in control of their country, and the responsibility lies with them.
And Russia's in control of them, or
I'm not.
very
I mean,
close to them.
I'm answering your question. If I'm
sorry.
okay,
Go ahead.
Linda. Oh, so you had another question?
Yeah. Is there any news on the West in Israel on the on the Palestinians in the western part of the country?
In the West
Western
Bank? I mean,
Jordan-
we've
West
been,
Bank.
I think yesterday we gave quite a long update on that and expressed our
Okay.
concern at the continuing violence. Linda.
Thank you, Steph. Going back to Gaza, you mentioned that 99 UN staff have been killed there, and overwhelming number of staff members are Palestinian.
The vast majority, yes.
Yeah. So my question is, where in general have
Can you put
these?
the microphone a little
Sorry,
closer?
where in general have these staff members been killed? Is it at UN facilities? Is that their
Many of them
home?
in their homes with their families. Yeah.
And also, do you have any update in terms of latest developments on Ukraine, in terms of any kind of peace talks, movement?
No, I
nothing?
mean, I think we updated yesterday or the day before on the latest humanitarian work. Our work is continuing unabated, especially in terms of preparation for winter. Dulcie.
Yeah, on the Malian situation, did you say in your long, detailed remarks that these troops are now in Gao, and what happens next?
Some of them will leave back home. I think I mentioned, I should listen to what I say as well. I think it's troops from
Bangladesh, Chad, Guinea, and Nepal.
what I said is that this week the Chadian and Guinean contingents of the convoy that left Kidal are scheduled to leave from Gao to their respective countries.
So how are they getting home?
I think we will. I don't think we want to publicize in advance, given the situation, their exact travel plans.
Well, is it road or air?
I think our primary concern is with their safety and that they get home safely.
What about the troops that are you didn't mention?
The others will leave through Bamako. I mean, you know, we had troops from, if I'm not mistaken, including Bangladesh. They will clearly leave by air from Bamako, and others will probably leave from Bamako.
So they're traveling by road again from Gao
I
to
will,
Bamako?
let's, one step at a time in order to keep the casualties down. Let's go to the screen and we'll come back for round two. Maggie, Abdelhamid, and then Yvonne. Margaret? Okay. We'll come back to Abdelhamid and then Yvonne.
Thank you, Stéphane. First, where is Thor Winsland now? Can you locate him anywhere in?
I can locate him.
Palestinian
He's in.
territory?
I can locate him. He's in Jerusalem.
He is in Jerusalem. Okay. So, is he planning to visit Gaza or Rafah crossing like any other UN official?
Look, everyone has different roles to play. A lot of the work that Mr. Venezuelan does is political. It involves meeting people and being on the phone and traveling and not always doing, having to go to Rafah and raise awareness. That is the job of others. His role is focused on the political aspects.
I have another question, if you don't mind.
Never.
Okay. In the statement attributed to the spokesman for the Secretary General yesterday,
That's me.
it says that on the occasion of 1 month after 7 October, it says that the Secretary General reiterates his total condemnation of the act of terror committed by Hamas in Israel. So it's condemnation and addressed to Hamas, mentioned by name Hamas. Now, the statement continues and it says the Secretary General remains extremely distressed by the killing of civilian innocents.
Abdelhamid,
Can I just ask my...
I'm always happy to answer questions, but I think you and I are having what in French we would call a dialogue de sourds. You do not need to quote my statements back to me. I understand that your job, in a sense, is to take them apart and criticize them and analyze them. Feel free to do that. But I made the statement yesterday on behalf of the Secretary General. What I would encourage you to do is read the body of the Secretary General's work. But I'm not going to explain what I just said yesterday. The words speak for themselves. The words speak for themselves. If you're...
Why the word Israel is missing? Why? I want to understand why you don't mention Israel is committing these crimes in Gaza. Why? Why you mentioned Hamas but not mention Israel?
I would...
Those Palestinian kids...
Abdelhamid, the statement was issued yesterday on a very particular day. I would encourage you to take 1 or 2 or 3 steps back and look at the body of everything the Secretary General has said, including you could look at what he said today in his Reuters event, and judge for that. But I'm not going to go and analyze my own words with respect. Yvonne.
Hi, thanks, Steph. Just 2 quick questions. Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has described the Hamas attacks and what he calls the collective punishment by Israel of Palestinian civilians as war crimes. Is that wording that the Secretary General agrees with?
Again, I think your colleague asked the same question. Mr. Turk has a very specific mandate. He works independently of the Secretary General. The Secretary General fully supports him in the work that he does, but it is not for him to bless or not bless the words that come out of the High Commissioner, who has, as I said, a very important independent role. And I think the Secretary General spoke extensively on the situation in Gaza in this live event this morning at Reuters, and I would encourage you to listen to his words there.
Okay, and sorry, one other quick question. Sorry if you addressed this at the beginning. I missed the beginning of the briefing, but Hamas says that UNRWA is complicit in forced displacement of Gazans. They say that UNRWA is colluding with Israel in the forced displacement of residents. Has there been any response to that? Have you got a response to that?
What I can tell you is that UNRWA and the UN in general doesn't collude with anyone. Our only focus, and UNRWA's only focus, is to support the civilian population in Gaza in what is a horrendous and undescribable moment in their history, and we will continue to do that. Edie, then Deji, and then I may go.
2 quick questions. The G7 met in Japan. Did the UN have anyone there monitoring?
No, ma'am.
Nobody?
No.
Okay, and secondly, going through the Rafah crossing, there haven't even gotten to 100 trucks a day.
No.
What is the UN understanding of what's blocking a significant increase in cross-border?
I mean, the general situation, the conflict. I mean, you can imagine the people that have and the parties that have to agree to make this work better. It is a constant struggle on the part of our humanitarian colleagues to try to figuratively push the gates wider, to let in more trucks, to do whatever we can to increase that traffic. As we've been saying, there were about 500 truckloads a day that went in before. A lot of that was commercial, and there was a huge commercial activity of import and export in Gaza. All of that has completely ceased. Deji.
Very quick question. It's been reported that Israel and Hamas has been negotiating in the mediation of Qatar to try to release 10 to 15 Israeli hostages in exchange of 1 to 2 days temporary pause. Do you have any updates on this, or does
No,
the
I
UN,
mean, I
UN
don't,
involve in
yeah.
this negotiation?
I don't have anything to share with you. It is clear that Qatar, and we've said this publicly, has a critical role to play on the issue, especially of hostages. We have remained in touch with all the parties on that issue as well, and the Secretary General very much so. Thank you all. And it's only Wednesday.